10 spot, we have Nessie is real. Okay guys, the Loch Ness Monster is real. At least that's what I think after watching this recent video shot from the air looking down upon the water. There is literally a long neck looking dinosaur in the water, and it has to be Nessie himself. Herself? Is Nessie a girl? This is definitely some footage that has been buried deep by the governments of the world, including the FBI. And why, you may ask? Damn, I don't know. Perhaps the discovery of this ancient creature could mean that there's more magical creatures out there. It could mean that there is a portal to a new world in the lake. Or perhaps it means that the wizarding world of Harry Potter is real. Anyways, this video I think is substantial proof that the cryptid that is known as the Loch Ness Monster is in fact real. If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that like button, as it really helps us out. In our number 9 spot, we have the deep sea cryptid. Okay, this footage blew my mind when I saw it. I personally think this is proof of yet another mythical ocean creature slash cryptid that we are unaware of yet. The ocean is so big and mysterious, I bet you even mermaids exist. In August of 2018, the Japan Agency of Marine Earth Science and Technology, when they found something in the waters of Sagami Bay near Tokyo. A big creature with big glowing eyes and a gaping mouth. Now at first it appears to move, but as the camera gets closer, it appears to freeze in place. And so, since we don't see it move much, some people say that it's an illusion of a creature and that it's really just a rock that looks like it has eyes, as humans have a tendency to see faces in inanimate objects. But what if it's a creature that became aware of the fact that it was being watched, and so it froze to look like a rock? This creature legit looks like it stepped right out of Monsters Inc. I don't know. Anyways, this footage could be nothing, or it could be everything, and that's why it's possible that it's being marketed as possibly nothing. In our number 8 spot, we have the hide behind. I had no idea what this was before I researched this video, but apparently there is an ancient creature known as a hide behind. And these creatures used to hide in forests and were nocturnal, and they would prey upon humans that wander the woods, such as lumberjacks. They are said to be able to conceal themselves. The creature quickly hides behind an object so it's not directly seen. This is how it's able to attack human prey, by stalking them from afar and not be seen. Anyways, now that you know what a hide behind is, this video that was captured by a grandmother certainly shows a creature that looks just like a hide behind. A shadow, if you will. If this video was not staged, and it is real, like they claim, then I definitely think this is proof of some kind of hide behind or mythical creature. Perhaps it's Bigfoot, but certainly this shadowy figure doesn't seem completely normal. In our number 7 spot, we have the Kraken. The giant squid known around the world as the Kraken is an enormous squid-like sea monster originally from Scandinavian folklore. People believe tales of the creature were created after fishermen spotted giant squid out on the water. Anyways, recently something very mysterious was discovered when zooming into the middle of the sea on Google Earth. A strange, large creature that appears to light up and looks to be very large and is creating a wake. Google Earth's measuring tool has shown that the wake is over 250 meters wide. This picture has surely had the FBI concerned, as the internet has been going crazy trying to figure out if that's a kraken, an ancient dinosaur-like fish, or an alien craft that perhaps crashed into the water or is in the water. Without a doubt though, there's something mysterious going on there. Where is the light coming from, my friends? My vote is for alien craft. That makes more sense in terms of where the light is coming from. In our number 6 spot, we have July 1987. In July of 1987, Aaron O. Fodhagen was visiting from Ireland and riding the bus on an overcast but windy day. Aaron says that as they were coming up to Ivor Morriston, she was looking out into the lake from the bus and saw what looked like a giant boulder in the middle of the lake. She said that she knew that there were no boulders in the lake as it's a glacial lake and the sides go straight down. She reported and is quoted as saying, "The object was brown in color and the swell of the waves only came up halfway on the object, so I estimated that it was at least 5 feet out of the water. The length looked more than the height, maybe 5 to 8 feet long. I could not say it was moving as the bus was moving. I got the impression it was stationary. I watched the object for less than 2 minutes, but it felt like eternity. That was the effect it had on me." Stunned I was. My sighting ended when the bus got near Ivermoriston. She then went on to speak about how she returned the next day and of course the boulder was gone. In our number 5 spot we have the sighting of June 1989. On the 25th of June 1989, Mrs. Judy Chaffin was visiting Scotland from Vancouver Island when she caught the most extraordinary thing on her camera. The story is that she caught a 10-foot long animal with a basketball-sized head zigzagging across Urquhart Bay at 4:45 p.m. in the afternoon. The sighting was verified as an unknown animal by Dr. Gordon Williamson, who is a marine biologist in the area. The locals of course were convinced it was Nessie. I wish I had that footage to share, but as you can imagine, this was from 33 years ago, and so it is probably on a VHS tape lost in a dusty attic at this point. In our number 4 spot we have the sighting of 1990. 1990 was the year of a few sightings, and almost every year after this, there are many sightings reported. The most notable sighting was from April 26, 1990. 2 men by the name of Trevor Davis and Jimmy McIntyre, both from a city in Scotland called Inverness, reported seeing a huge creature circling in the water near the mouth of River Foyers. They have stated that its neck rose 6 feet out of the water. In our number 3 spot, we have the sighting of 1999. It was February 22nd, 1999, and a tourist spotted Nessie out of the water fully for the first time since June 1963. Apparently Nessie was spotted out of the water on the shores of Loch Ness by an American visitor. The sighting was at 8:30 in the evening between Doris and Foyers. The creature was reported as being about 10 to 15 meters long with a very long neck. Apparently, as the man approached the creature, it quickly went back into the water and out of sight. Wow. I truly wonder how these sightings are verified, as it's always possible that this man was, on an illicit drug, or that maybe he just wanted some attention, but then it's also possible that he could have actually witnessed an ancient creature that seemingly picks and chooses who it reveals itself to. In our number 2 spot, we have the sighting of March 17th, 2021. This sighting comes equipped with a video, so I'm gonna let you decide on this one. This is a video from a farm looking upon the loch on March 17th, 2021. A St. Patrick's Day sighting. In this video, you clearly see a dark shadow pop up in the water and you watch it move across the lake. As it perhaps turns to the side, we get quite the profile shot of it, and it appears to be long. Now, this is a lake. There are no long or big sharks in this lake, so this is quite a notable sighting. Whether the shadow is a large dark fish is debatable because it is quite long at one point, and it is quite a dark shadow. Does that look like a fish to you? Would love to know your thoughts in the comment section below. In our number 1 spot, we have the October 19th, 2021 sighting. On October 19th, 2021, not too long ago, Erin Fagan captured something extraordinary on her webcam. She's a bit of a veteran when it comes to filming Nessie, and has a YouTube channel with a variety of recordings that she's made. Quite a lot of them leave you thinking, what is that? This one in particular is one of them. In this video, you see an extremely long and dark something in the lake, and towards the end of the video, you see it go deeper into the water, and then when a boat starts to come into view in the lake, the creature completely disappears. The creature looked to be at least a couple of feet or more. The video is so interesting, and I hate that it's not more clear.
Starting off at number 10 now, we have "Who Put Bella in the Wych Elm?" Those are the words that first appeared in graffiti in 1944 in Birmingham. They may sound like nonsense to you, but they were referencing a murder. You see, the year before, 4 boys in in the nearby town of Hagley discovered the body of a woman in the trunk of a wych elm. Police estimated that she had been killed and put there about 18 months before. The woman was never identified, but the graffiti, that creepy question of who put Bella in the wych elm, that kept appearing. It seemed that whoever started writing that message had knowledge about the case, or may have even been the one who killed the woman, presumed to be called Bella. In the decades since then, there have been a number of theories about who killed Bella. Some say she was a victim of witchcraft, and that her severed hand was proof of a dark ritual called the Hand of Glory. Either way, it seems that someone was once out there who knew what really happened and wanted to get people to investigate by writing that one creepy question everywhere they could. Alright, moving on to number 9 now, we have the Solway Spaceman. This one used to creep me out a lot as a kid. I was absolutely fascinated by it though. Perhaps some of you guys watching this are about the same age as I was when I discovered this, so I'm happy to pass this on to the next generation. The Solway Spaceman is a mysterious picture taken in 1964 by Jim Templeton in Cumbria, England. Jim took the picture of his 5-year-old daughter, but to his surprise, when he got the picture developed, there appeared to be a figure in a spacesuit in the background. Jim insisted that he did not see anyone around them when the picture was taken. It didn't take long for people to start talking about aliens or time travelers. These theories only grew louder when Jim claims 2 men who said they were from the government visited him but refused to show any ID, and then demanded he showed them where the picture was taken. In the years since then, some have said that the spaceman is nothing more than a view of Jim's wife from behind, her dress appearing white from overexposure. Read a full article on this if you like. It's a really interesting story.
Number 6. Drop in reports. For the 90 years that Loch Ness Monster sightings have been recorded, there were always multiple sightings yearly, and even if some of them turned out to be a hoax, there were still reports. But 2013 was the first year that there were no sightings at all. This came after a string of years with declining numbers of sightings, so it seems a trend was forming, and she had decided to spend less and less time on our plane of existence. But since 2013, reports have skyrocketed, increasing every year to nearly 20 in each of the past few years. Some of this is because of the webcam system that's been set up, combined with the stay-at-home isolation of the past few years. More people are on the lookout, and more sightings have happened. Strange wakes occur in the water, humps are spotted rising out, and strange movements on the shore are just some of the things captured on the webcam. Number 5. Prehistoric evidence. Now, one of the main theories about what Nessie may be is that she's actually a form of plesiosaur, a sea-dwelling dinosaur that supposedly went extinct about 66 million years ago, along with the rest of the dinosaurs. These were characterized as carnivorous creatures with 4 fins, long necks, and humpbacked bodies who fed on fish and other sea creatures. They were thought to have existed only in seawater, but in 2021 in the Sahara Desert, paleontologists found new evidence of their existence in freshwater. In what was once an ancient freshwater riverbed, bones were found of small plesiosaurs that must have adapted to move from the ocean and into river and lake systems. And if this could happen in one place, what would stop them from doing the same to enter an ancient river system in Europe and eventually become what we call the Loch Ness Monster? Perhaps if they couldn't physically travel there because a little thing called land was in the way, they traveled through another river, one created and formed from space-time. Speaking of space-time, our number 4 entry concerns how it can be bent and morphed to do all sorts of crazy things. When Albert Einstein created his theory of special relativity, he explained that the speed of light was a constant, about 300,000 kilometers per second, or 186,000 miles per second for my American friends, and that this constant could be observed throughout space and time. But the only way that this could be constant between the two simultaneously is if space and time were linked. So, as someone in a rocket approaches the speed of light, they would perceive time to be slower and the lengths of objects to be shorter, compared to someone moving at a much slower speed. So in theory, if you could find a way to bend space-time, either through some advanced technology or perhaps some mystical energy, you could travel incredible distances or through time near instantly. Along with this, the existence of dark matter, which is a strange form of matter that is invisible yet incredibly dense and makes up 5 times more of the universe than normal matter does. It can actually bend gravity and space-time around itself. Is there a large pocket of dark matter in Loch Ness that allows Nessie to bend space around it and move to another time? Perhaps she is actually a dinosaur from the past, unwittingly traveling around around and trying to find her way home. Number 3, the Mandela effect. I'm sure many of you have heard of the Mandela effect, but I'll give a brief summary. Essentially, it's a phenomenon of mass misremembering of events, such as the one where it got its name, where before his death in 2013, many people remembered Nelson Mandela having already died in the 1980s. There are countless examples of these collective memory lapses, like Looney Tunes being spelled with O's instead of a U, the Monopoly Man having a monocle, or other small changes in our reality, a glitch in the Matrix, if you will. Lots of people think these changes in their memory prove the existence of many parallel universes where each small change creates an entirely new universe, and maybe that's where Nessie exists, as a collective memory from another universe that we no longer reside in. But the theory of multiple universes existing at once is not the one that I find the most plausible. Number 2, the Big Bounce. Now, this is personally one of my favorite things to talk about when it comes to theoretical physics, which doesn't sound exciting, I know, but I promise you it's really cool. When the universe was created in the Big Bang, all the particles and energy of the universe were shot out into empty space from a singular point at incredible speeds. This theory suggests that as the universe expands, space-time and gravity will both be pulling against it as it expands, eventually reaching a point of equilibrium in a few billion years. And when this happens, one of two things will occur. Either the universe will continue to expand and tear space-time, causing the eventual death of the universe, or what I find to be more likely is the forces pulling against the universe will draw it all the way back inwards down to a single point, only to bounce off again, creating another Big Bang and expanding. This is how parallel universes may function, not because there are many existing at once, but because this universe has and will continue to exist an infinite number of times, expanding and contracting, having minor differences each time. This is where Nessie could come into this, because perhaps she existed in one version of this universe, but not another, and some people are only seeing the echoes of where she once was. I think that the number 1 spot on this list of evidence may actually be the sheer lack of evidence. Now, I know this may be contradictory and not particularly good science, but we're talking about a mythological beast here, so we need to take it a little easy on our expectations. While there have been so many sightings, images captured, and even sounds recorded of the monster, no one has captured it well enough on film or gotten close enough to call it true evidence. Scientists have used sonar, radar, trawled the bottom of the lake, and performed all sorts of experiments to see if it exists and found nothing. Yet there are still so many reports that come up each year, and some of them are pretty convincing, and it makes me wonder if Nessie is smarter than we think. Perhaps even a being of greater intelligence that outwits us and moves between universes, baffling humans in each of them, just for a good time. With so many sightings but so little solid evidence, the Loch Ness Monster truly remains a mystery, and it may just be one that's bigger than we ever imagined.
Starting off at number 10 now, we have the Tulip Staircase Ghost. In 1966, Reverend R.W. Hardy was visiting the Queen's House in Greenwich. There was an old staircase there known as the Tulip Staircase. He decided to take a picture of it. It wasn't until he got his photo developed that he saw this, a figure scaling the stairs that had not been there when he took the picture. The strange hooded figure became known as the Tulip Staircase Ghost. Ghost hunters have now been visiting the site for over 50 years. Many of them have reported strange results from their recording equipment. Looking at that picture, even the most skeptical of people have admitted that the hands and the body do look like an actual person, albeit one that's perhaps locked between the two worlds of the afterlife and the Tulip Staircase. Coming at number 9 now, we have Spring-Heeled Jack. In October 1837, a girl called Mary Stevens was said to have been walking through Clapham Common in England when a strange figure leapt at her from a dark alleyway. He began to kiss her face while ripping her clothes off with his claws before fleeing the scene. The next day, the same figure caused a carriage to crash. This time they said that he breathed fire, laughed, and then jumped over a 9-foot high wall. Locals began to call him Spring-Heeled Jack. The following year, a woman called Jane Aslop said that she answered the door to a man claiming to be a police officer who said they caught Spring-Heeled Jack. She brought him a candle, at which point he tore his cloak off, vomited blue and white flames from his mouth while his eyes resembled red balls of fire. He tore at her with his long claws, but she managed to escape. It's been over 180 years since then, but that hasn't stopped the legend of Spring-Heeled Jack from living on. Next up at number 8 now, we have the Highgate Vampire. In 1969, a man called David Farrant reported seeing a ghostly grey figure walking through the Highgate Cemetery. As more reports poured in, another man called Sean Manchester stepped forward to say he knew what the sightings were of, a vampire. Eventually, people began to believe this. Local people went hunting around the cemetery looking for the vampire, armed with crucifixes and heavy wooden stakes. Sean claimed a sleepwalking girl had actually led him to the graves one night to kill the monster. He and David became convinced that a group of Satanists were using the cemetery to summon demons and that the vampire was just one of many. Although the media frenzy has died down now over the years, many locals still swear there's something not right about that cemetery, and so the legend of the vampire lives on. Coming at number 7 now, we have the screams of the dead. In 1943, Bethnal Green in East London experienced one of the worst tragedies of World War II. It wasn't from bombs, but panic. During air raid siren tests, civilians on their way to shelter in the tube station began to converge on the same entrance all at once. In their panic to get down, some people tripped and then a stampede began. People fell to the ground and were crushed. 173 people were trampled to death, including at least 41 children. Locals say the place never really healed. They report hearing women screaming and children crying in the station and a deep sense of dread in the night air.
Number 6. Surgeon's photograph. The surgeon's photograph is the first photo of the creature's head and neck that was taken by Robert Kenneth Wilson, a London gynecologist, and was published in the Daily Mail on April 21st, 1934. According to Dr. Wilson, he was looking at the loch when he saw the monster, grabbed his camera, and snapped 4 photos. Only 2 exposures came out clearly. The first reportedly shows a small head and back, and the second shows a similar head in a diving position. The first photo became well known, and the second attracted little publicity because of its blurriness. Now, for 60 years, the photo was considered evidence of the monster's existence, although skeptics dismissed it. The photo scale was controversial as it often showed cropped, making the creature seem large and the ripples like waves, while the uncropped shot shows the other end of the loch and the monster in the center. The ripples in the photo were found to fit the size and pattern of small ripples rather than large waves photographed up close. Analysis of the original image fostered further doubt, and in 1993 the makers of the Discovery Communications documentary Loch Ness Discovered analyzed the uncropped image and found a white object visible in every version of the photo, implying that it was on the negative. An analysis of the full photo indicated that the object was small, about 2 to 3 feet long, but I don't know though, that just sounds like a cover up to me. Number 5. Dinsdale film. Aeronautical engineer Tim Dinsdale filmed a hump that left a wake crossing Loch Ness in 1960. Tim, who reportedly had the sighting on his final day of search, described the creature as reddish with blotches on its side. He said that when he mounted his camera, the object began to move, and he shot 40 feet of film. According to Jarek, the object was probably animate, and others were skeptical, saying that the bump cannot be ruled out as being a boat. In 1993, Discovery Communications produced the documentary, again Loch Ness Discovered, with a digital enhancement of the Dinsdale film. A person who enhanced the film noticed a shadow in the negative that was not obvious in the developed film. By enhancing and overlaying frames, he found what appeared to be a rear body of a creature underwater. Before I saw the film, I thought the Loch Ness Monster was a load of rubbish. Having done enhancement, I'm not too sure, they said. Number 4. George Edwards' photograph. On August 3rd, 2012, skipper George Edwards claimed a photo he took on November 2nd, 2011 shows Nessie. George claims that he had searched for the monster for 26 years and reportedly spent 60 hours per week on the loch aboard his boat, Nessie Hunter IV, taking tourists for rides on the lake. He said, "In my opinion, it probably looks kinda like a manatee, but not a mammal. When people see 3 humps, they're probably just seeing 3 separate monsters." Other researchers have questioned the photograph's authenticity, and Loch Ness researcher Steve Feldman suggests that the object in the water is a fiberglass hump used in the National Geographic Channel documentary in which George had participated. Now, researcher Dick Rayner said George told him he had faked a photograph in 1986 that he claimed was genuine in the Nat Geo documentary. Although he admitted in October 2013 that his 2011 photo was a hoax, he insisted that the 1986 photo was genuine. Number 3. David Elder video. On August 27th, 2013, tourist David Elder presented a 5-minute video of a mysterious wave in the loch. According to David, the wave was produced by a 15-foot solid black object just under the surface of the water. Now, David from East Kilbride, South Lanarkshire, was taking a picture of a swan in the Fort Augustus Pier on the southwestern end of the loch when he captured the movement. He said the water was very still at the time and there were no ripples coming off the waves and no other activity on the water. Skeptics Critics suggest that the wave may have been caused by a wind gust, but I'd like to think that it was Nessie. Number 2. Peter McNab. On July 29th, 1955, Peter McNab took a photograph at Urquhart Castle that depicted 2 long black humps in the water. The photograph was not made public until it appeared on Constance White's 1957 book on the subject of the Loch Ness Monster, and on October 23, 1958, it was published by the Weekly Scotsman. Author Ronald Binns wrote the phenomenon which McNab photographed could easily be a wave effect resulting in 3 trawlers traveling closely together up the loch. Other researchers considered the photograph a hoax, and Roy McCall requested to use the photograph in his 1976 book. He received an original negative from McNab, but discovered it was different from the photograph that appeared in White's book. The tree at the bottom left in White's was missing from the negative, and it is suspected that the photograph was doctored by re-photographing the print. And coming in at number 1 is George Spicer. Interest in the monster was sparked by a sighting on July 22nd, 1933, when George Spicer and his wife saw the most extraordinary form of an animal cross the road in front of their car. They described the creature as having a large body, about 4 feet high and 20 feet long, and a long, wavy, narrow neck, slightly thicker than an elephant's trunk, and as long as the 10 to 12 foot width of the road. They saw no limbs, and it lurched across the road towards the loch 20 yards away, leaving a trail of broken undergrowth in its wake. George described it as the nearest approach to dragon, a prehistoric animal that I have ever seen in my life, and as having a long neck which moved up and down in a manner of a scenic railway. It had an animal in its mouth and a body that was fairly big with a high back, but if there were any feet it must have been the web kind, and as far as a tail I cannot say as it moved so rapidly, and when we got to the spot it had probably disappeared into the loch.
Starting off at number 10 now, we have the corpse train. Now, according to London folklore, in the early 1900s there was a train that ran underneath the city and it was only for dead people. Back then, London's hospitals and morgues were struggling to deal with the vast amount of people that were dying from poverty and disease. They decided to transport the bodies out of the city, but knew that they couldn't do it overground without disturbing a lot of people. So they used an existing train line to load the bodies onto. The train ran just the other side of a wall from the normal daily service, where unsuspecting Londoners were getting on and off their trains unaware of the nearby bodies. Next up at number 8 now, we have Annie. This one comes from Edinburgh, Scotland. In the old town there lies a street known as Mary King's Close. It's steeped in myths and legends of hauntings and murders. In 1990, a psychic called Aiko Gibo visited and felt a small hand touch hers. She said that she then made contact with the spirit of a dead called Annie, who had died in a plague hundreds of years ago and had lost her doll. The psychic then went to a nearby shop and brought back a Barbie doll for her. Now since then, visitors leave dolls for Annie and a mountain of them has built up in the dark. Moving on to number 7 now, we have the Faceless Woman. This one comes from the borough of Barking in London. There you can find Beacon Tree Station, home to the Faceless Woman. The most famous sighting of her happened in 1992. A station supervisor reported that on one night he heard the handle of his office door rattle. Outside on the platform stood a woman. She had blonde hair, she wore a very pale dress and just stared into the distance. The supervisor approached her, but as he reached out, she turned to him only to reveal she had no face, just darkness where there should be one. Local ghost hunters claim that she is the victim of a train crash that happened there in 1958 which killed 10 people.
In our number 6 spot, we have the alien sea creature. This may be our biggest piece of proof that aliens might live underneath us or in the water. This video captured from a Brazilian beach was buried deep online, probably by the FBI because of its mysteriousness. It showcases a very strange looking creature in the water that looks just like every picture of an alien that I've ever seen. Ever think about where we originally got our idea for how aliens look? Yeah, well, probably from meeting them, or possibly from seeing creatures like this. This creature looks like it has arms and legs and is just walking around the shore and isn't seemingly looking threatening, just going about and doing its thing. It was described as a jellyfish-like monster. If that isn't an alien, then please explain to us what that is. Conclusion? It's an alien sea creature. In our number 5 spot, we have the baby dragon. A video was shot showing a creature in a pond that literally looks exactly like the ancient Chinese dragon that we see in folklore. Or they look like Khaleesi's dragons when they were babies. Game of Thrones, anyone? Anyways, this video is wild. Very, very strange. This creature is exactly like every image of a dragon that I'm sure you've ever seen, and it is just swimming around in the water. Dragons are so embedded into many cultures, and over many civilizations people believed in dragons, and so it just makes you think perhaps they were once real, or perhaps they are real. It's possible though that the old civilizations just stumbled across dinosaur bones that made them think fire-breathing dragons were real too. That's very possible. But in any case, this specific video hasn't been proven to be real, so it's possible that it's fake. But if it were to be real, I'm sure a narrative would be spun around it, because that would be a massive discovery that humans may not be ready for. In our number 4 spot, we have Bigfoot. Look, there are so many stories and supposed sightings of the Mudman, Bigfoot, and honestly, this one is the most interesting one yet. A trail cam was deep in the woods when it captured a giant creature walking through the wood. It might be behind a row of trees, but it is clear as day that this creature is big, whatever it is. It appears to have hands and feet. It doesn't move like a bear, it moves like an oversized human. So this could very well be the best footage of Bigfoot that I've ever seen. Apparently the people that took this footage tend to upload footage of animals and bears and have no drive to tamper with the footage, so a lot of people believe it to be real. Also, apparently after this they set up more trail cams in the hopes of seeing it again, but all of the additional cams went missing. Whoa, that's a smart Bigfoot right there, making sure to watch the humans and get rid of all the evidence. Anyways, I think this is definitely footage the FBI would be worried about, so they themselves could have destroyed the trail cams. In our number 3 spot, we have the Blue Mountains Panther. The Blue Mountains Panther is a creature from Australian folklore that is essentially a giant panther that lives in the mountains of Australia. This panther has had sightings for centuries, however Australia isn't known to have any kind of panther on the continent. Anyways, a picture of what looks like a giant cat-like creature, most likely a panther, was caught on camera, and it's had Australia in a tizzy. It's the Blue Mountain Panther, everyone thinks. It's clear as day that it's a cat-like creature and it looks like a panther. If it is not this mythical creature, then what is it? Would love to know your thoughts in the comment section below. In our number 2 spot, we have Sasquatch. This next footage is really interesting and something I know has been buried because of the sheer amount of people that can confirm its validity. While on a ski slope, a bunch of skiers had to stop as they appeared to see a giant in the woods. Everything you have ever heard about Sasquatch would describe what these people saw. Hairy, ape-like, living in the woods. The footage captured shows it trying to hide, but without a doubt it was seen by many, and that would certainly put a dent in the theory that Sasquatch is a mythological creature. Some people think that our human ancestors or relatives could have survived into the modern era, and so this creature could just be a human ancestor. If this is true, then 1, there must be 2 of them to have continued on the species like this, or 2, if there's only 1, is this an immortal human ancestor from centuries ago? The latter would certainly be cooler. We discovered how to fly in the sky. Perhaps we humans have discovered everlasting life and the general public just doesn't know about it yet. Side thought. In our number 1 spot, an elf. On a First Nation reserve in Saskatchewan, a strange creature was caught on camera that quite possibly the FBI doesn't want you to see. In the video, you see a creature go behind a large rock when the person recording the video turns their light on. It's kinda hard to make out exactly what it is. Some people think that it's an elf, or a fairy, or a wendigo, a type of shape-shifting creature that is evil. Honestly, I don't know what it is, but it appears to be some kind of mythical creature. People have been reporting seeing this monster for thousands of years, and so it makes you think that there might be something to this video, and it could very well showcase something no human has officially been able to confirm before on camera. I hope it's an elf. That sounds way better than an evil shapeshifter. If elves exist, they should just come and live among us. I bet you us humans would accept them. How could we not? They're so cute and cool. In our number 10 spot, we have the 1941 sighting. It was December in 1941, and two brothers by the names of Callum McFarlane Barrow and Patrick thought that they must have been dreaming. They saw a large creature in the loch near Fort Augustus. Much to their surprise, they ended up seeing the same creature again later that day. They absolutely think that they saw the Loch Ness as it looked nothing like anything they had ever seen before. Apparently in 2018, Callum explained that sightings of the monster were much more common at that time. In our number 9 spot, we have the sighting of 1961. It was May in 1961, and a man named George Coots was with 3 of his friends, and they were driving to Foyers on the south side of the loch at 8 p.m. in the evening. In case you don't know, loch means lake. They pulled over and looked into the loch, aka a lake, where the Loch Ness was known to be in, when they saw what looked like an elephant's back. They tried to flag down a passing car so that they could grab some more witnesses, but it wouldn't stop. They decided to not tell anyone, and George finally came out with the story in September of 2019. Wow, that's a long time to be holding that story in. In our number 8 spot, we have the sighting of May 1969. It was May of 1969, and a man named Fred Millwood was traveling towards Inverness when he spotted what he described as a 10 to 12 foot long creature traveling across the loch at about 4 miles per hour. He described the creature as if it was an upturned boat and there was no head in sight. When the creature was about 200 to 300 meters from the other side of the lake, it vanished. Fred waited for about a half an hour, but nothing occurred after that. Ah, too bad. Poor Fred. In our number 7 spot, we have the sighting of October 1969. In October of 1969, 2 men by the names of Peter Mackenzie and his uncle, Peter, were out fishing in a small boat at the north side of the loch. While fishing, they experienced 2 sightings of old Nessie. The first time it appeared, they saw something under the water that was coming at them like a speedboat from the direction of the Klansman Hotel. They then realized that it was definitely not an underwater boat, and its shape appeared much different before it disappeared. Then it resurfaced and headed for the middle of the lake, where they were able to see it in profile. Peter described it as if it had the color and shape of an elephant. It then disappeared under the water, and their boat was rocked so hard by the waves from it.
At number 6 now, we have The Beast. England's Hackney Marshes is known for its sprawling woodland and boggy reed marshes often covered in swirling fog, the perfect setting for this urban legend. The story goes that in 1980, 2 bear carcasses were found in the river. They had been People started speculating about who or what could cut a bear's head clean off its shoulders. Then, a year later, 4 boys were taking a walk along the marsh one winter morning when they saw it through the trees. They described it as a giant, great, growling, hairy thing. As soon as it saw them, it reared up on its back legs and let out a deafening roar. The boys ran, but the story remains always in the back of people's minds as they trudged through the marsh. We're returning now to the London Underground for our number 5 with The Crying Girl. On November 18th, 1987, a match was dropped on an escalator at London's King Cross station. A fire quickly spread into the nearby ticket office, which resulted in the death of 31 people. In the years since then, passengers have reported seeing a girl who died around the station. She has long brown hair, wears jeans and a t-shirt, and is always crying. Some people have even reported hearing her sobs while smelling smoke coming out from the escalators. Moving on to number 3 now, we have Cane Hill. Some say this is one of the most haunted places in England. It was a mental asylum for over 100 years, from 1882 to 1991. It built up a reputation for abandoning some of its patients, hiding them away from the public eye, and never truly helping them. Some people say the patients who died left their energy behind there because of their tortured lives. The building was gutted by a mysterious fire in 2010. Perhaps the scariest stories of all are of the faces appearing by the burnt out windows. Next up at number 2 now, we have the House of the Screaming Skull. This one comes from Bettiscombe Manor in Dorset, England. The legend goes that in 1830, a man lived there called John Frederick Pinney. He had a slave that he had brought back from the Caribbean island of Nevis. The man became ill, and on his deathbed, he swore he would never rest unless his body was returned home to Nevis. Pinney refused to pay for that expense, and when he died, he had the man buried in the local graveyard. After that, ill fortune began to plague the village for months. Screams and cries were heard from the cemetery. At the manor house, windows rattled and doors kept slamming. The body was dug up and brought to the manor house, where today only the skull remains, where it's said to haunt the manor, but the village remains safe. And finally, at number 1 now, we have the Hellhounds. Dartmoor is a vast, rocky, windy and mysterious part of England. It's popular among tourists, but everyone who goes there is aware of the legend of the Hellhounds. It's said that a pack of these ghost dogs wanders the moors at night, preying on sheep, and they're not afraid of humans. They've often been described as cat-like, but with the frame of a bear, and very fast. There have been pictures and film taken of them over the years that claim to show glimpses of these hellhounds in action. Many of the locals don't even need that though. They've heard the stories handed down from generation to generation. Some of them even say they've seen the hounds with their own 2 eyes.
And at number 10, we have the Loch Ness Monster. Everyone's been talking about this Loch Ness Monster. Has anyone actually seen it? Nessie is a lake creature that is said to lurk in the depths of Loch Ness in the Scottish Highlands. This lake is notorious for being murky and frigid, which is perfect for a creature like this. The Loch Ness Lake is up to 755 feet deep, which gives Nessie plenty of place to hide. For years, there have been so much debate on whether or not the Loch Ness Monster actually exists. There are even people who have said that they've seen the creature with their own eyes, and then of course there are all those pictures on the internet. But as it turns out, Nessie might be real after all. A major scientific study was conducted to find out the truth. Scientists from New Zealand took DNA from creatures that have lived in the lake. When they analyzed the samples, they found out that there might be evidence that the Loch Ness Monster really does exist. Hundreds of thousands of people travel to Loch Ness every single year in hopes that they're going to be able to catch a glimpse of Nessie himself. And you know what, maybe one day we can say for certain if, it actually exists or not. Next up, number 9, we have the Black Shuck. Take a look at this thing. The Black Shuck is a ghostly looking creature that resembles a huge black dog, except it has devilish red or green eyes. According to local reports, the Black Shuck is known to lurk in the countryside of East Anglia in England. But be careful, if you spot this beast, it is believed that you will die shortly after, or you'll become seriously sick. But one thing is for certain, if you manage to look this creature in the eye, you will for sure die. According to one old town legend, in 1577, this giant hellhound killed 2 people who were outside of a church, and then just 12 miles away, it killed 2 more people. Clearly this thing is more terrifying than Cujo, and I really hope this monster doesn't actually exist, but unfortunately I can't say for certain that it doesn't. Number 8, Domovoi. Let me take you guys over to Russia, where they believe that every house has a Domovoi. These are small hairy creatures that are barely seen, but everyone believes that they're probably living behind your stove. I couldn't believe this one. Well, the goal of the Domovoi is to maintain order and peace throughout your house. So basically, if you treat them with respect, they will help you out with chores, but if you act rudely, violently, or if you are messy, the Domovoi will resort to poltergeist activities and they'll really mess things up for you. They might wake you up in the middle of the night, break things, or disturb your sleep. If you don't keep up with their demands, they will basically make your life a living hell and wreak havoc on you and your home. They say that when people die in their sleep or from natural causes, it was actually the Domovoi killing them. Yeah, I'd probably make sure that you mop and turn the dishwasher on tonight. I don't think any of us want the Domovoi to get really upset. Loup-garou makes it onto this list at number 7. This is the French version of the werewolf that I am so pronouncing the name wrong. However, it is much more sinister. This creature can change from a human into a wolf whenever it wants, and unlike a typical werewolf, it doesn't depend on the moon's phases. So basically this thing can terrorize and hurt humans whenever they feel like it. When the loup-garou transforms into a werewolf, they are still able to think and rationalize like humans, so this ability makes them incredibly smart and way more dangerous. Oh, and get this, they can also turn into a dog, calf, pig, cat, or even owl. So because of this, humanoid creature is able to transform into a bunch of different animals. How can you rule out its existence? The simple answer is we cannot. Next up,
moving on to number 6 now, we have a weird one. It's called the Frittening. This was the name given to a creature that's said to live on the Isle of Shetland in Scotland. Locals claim that it's a boneless, blob-like beast that will scare anyone who sees it to death. Those that caught a glimpse and lived to tell the tale described it as looking like a bag of wet sand or wool. Others said it was an armless, legless, ghastly, wet, vile thing that pressed its lidless eye against their windows. I'm a little bit worried because that description Kind of fits me if I'm having a rough morning. Next up at number 5 now we have Netta Fornario. This woman from London was said to be a member of the occult. In the summer of 1929, at the age of 30, she left London for Iona, a small Scottish island steeped in folklore. She joined a secretive occult group known for their ritual magic, tarot cards, mysticism, telepathy, and a deep interest in fairies. After some months, her landlady found her one morning in a frenzy, packing her luggage. She told the landlady that she needed to return to London immediately, as several members of the cult were attacking her telepathically. The landlady said she would have to wait, as the boat didn't run on Sundays. Netta became enraged and retreated to her room. She eventually calmed down and said she would stay and that she was going out for a walk. When she didn't return by nightfall, the landlady raised the alarm. After 2 days, a search party found her body. She was found lying on top of some turf that had a cross carved into it. She was wearing only a thin black cloak. The doctor who examined her body could not find any cause of death. Her body was in a fine physical condition. It was just dead. Officials put it down to exposure to the elements on the cold Scottish island. Others believe she was killed by a psychic telepathic attack generated by someone miles away. Moving on to number 4 now, we have the Boggart. If you're a Harry Potter fan, you may have heard of the Boggart before, but did you know it's based on a real legend? Boggart Hole Clough is a 190-acre area of ancient woodland that is said to be haunted by a boggart, a mischievous spirit that typically lives in fields and marshes but can also be found indoors. They are usually known for their harmless peskiness, turning milk sour or making objects disappear, but some people say they have a much darker side. They are often blamed for the abduction of children. The one that gives its name to Boggart Hole Clough is claimed to be notorious for this. It's been said that it was so active once that a farmer and his family were driven from their home for fear of the boggart stealing their children. Next up, number 3 now, we have the figure in the studio. In an interview with The Londonist, a couple of radio hosts from Resonance FM in London told a story that has sparked a modern day urban legend, the figure in the studio. They said that one day while working in the radio station, they saw an evil spirit, more malevolent than anything you can imagine. It was just standing there at night in their offices watching them. It looked like a shadow with angry red rimmed eyes and strange looking dark teeth. Just before they called out to it, the spirit smiled, revealing its long teeth, and then it disappeared. Many local ghost hunters are convinced that they have discovered a new spirit and that this won't be the last haunting of the figure in the studio. Moving on to number 2 now, we have the Devil's Bridge. According to legend, the devil visited Ceredigion in Wales in the 11th century after hearing about its breathtaking scenery. Yes, even the devil appreciates a good view. While there, he struck a bargain with a local woman whose cow was stranded across the river. In a bid to buy her soul, the devil said he'd build her a bridge in exchange for the soul of the first living thing that crossed it. He was obviously hoping for hers. When the bridge was built, the woman threw a loaf of bread across which her dog chased. The devil couldn't take the dog's soul. He was said to be so embarrassed and ashamed that he never returned to Wales again. In the village of Devil's Bridge today, there are 3 crossings across that river. The oldest is said to be the one built by Satan himself.
Number 10. Very recently, in September of 2022, for those of you watching from the future, which, by the way, how's it going there? If you're watching this in the future, let me know in the comments. Anyway, in September, prominent paranormal scientist and Nessie expert Ron Halliday gave an interview to The Mirror, where he stated his belief that the Loch Ness Monster is from a parallel universe that we just may not be able to perceive. I'll be talking about the insane physics of parallel universes in a little bit, so stick around for that if you want to see me totally nerd out. He stated that many of the sightings and her disappearance thereafter may be explained by certain people being more psychically sensitive and picking up on things that are existing in multiple universes at once, or even something from the past. He went on to say that some people may even walk through portals to another dimension without realizing it, and that is where they may have seen the Loch Ness Monster and other cryptids. With so many sightings across hundreds of years, it's beginning to seem more and more likely that she can actually travel through time and space, and may be a being from another dimension. But the discussion of portals actually brings us to our number 9, the Upside Down. One of the many ways that parallel universes are often theorized as operating fascinating is that they exist at the same time as ours, but with very minor differences, running next to each other like the branches of a tree. However, this is not the only theory. Scientists are now discovering that there may actually be an upside down, like what is described in Netflix's Stranger Things, a universe that is the exact opposite of ours, existing on top, or rather below, our own, and we may have found a portal to enter it. Scientists at NASA's Antarctic Impulsive Transient Antenna, or ANITA for short, have been conducting experiments with very interesting results. Their antenna is located where there is the least amount of radio interference so that they can measure as accurately as possible. And they've found that a constant, quote, wind of particles arrives on Earth from outer space. There are subatomic particles called neutrinos detected, some of which have very low energy and mass that is close to zero, and they can pass right through the Earth. But anything larger or with higher mass gets stopped by the matter of the Earth. Because of this, we should only be seeing these high energy particles coming down from space, but instead they're also seeing some come up from the Earth. And this implies that the particles are actually reversing through time. And this suggests the existence of a parallel universe where time runs backwards and the world exists in opposition with itself. It would have been created at the same time as the Big Bang, with one universe running forward through time and one backwards. After all, every action has an equal and opposite reaction, right? Very interesting stuff. And maybe that's where Nessie exists, you know, traveling forward and backward through time, and that's why sightings have dwindled over the years, and we may have just found a way to enter it. Number 8, mirror dimension. Now before I tell you about this next one, give this video a like if you're enjoying it so far. It really helps us out. Now without spoiling anything for you, in Stranger Things, one of the ways to access the upside down is through portals, some of which exist in water, and scientists may have found one on the sea floor. And I think that if another one of these exists in Loch Ness, we may have found our answer on where Nessie goes when no one is watching. About 2 kilometers below the ocean's surface in the Gulf of California, marine researchers have been conducting experiments and collecting data from microbes on the sea floor. Way down below, they discovered something incredible, a mirror pool, where on the bottoms and inside of fissures of some rocks there are microbes that move in very strange ways and create a perfect reflection of what is around them. Some of this is caused by individual ecosystems forming near hydrothermal vents that shoot out all sorts of crazy chemicals and microbes from under the earth. The difference between what collects on the edges of these fissures and in the center is baffling scientists, and some believe that you may actually be able to send something through it into the earth, and that may be a way into another dimension. Perhaps the upside down? Is this where the Loch Ness Monster goes? Number 7. Alright, we need to actually discuss a few sightings of Nessie from over the years, because they actually help explain where and when she appears and disappears. Sightings have been reported since 564 CE, when St. Columba allegedly had to compel a strange creature to not attack one of their followers. But reports stopped until 1527, when Duncan Campbell sighted a terrible beast on the shore of the loch. There were more sightings here and there, but no real evidence until 1933, when Hugh Gray took a picture of what appears to be the hump and fin of our lake-dwelling friend. When it was published in a local newspaper, it was accompanied by a note from Kodak, the film company, who stated that the negatives had not been altered in any way. It's strange that all of the pictures of Nessie and other cryptids are so blurry and far away, especially since we all have 4K cameras in our pockets now. But maybe she's just smarter than we think, or she can only appear on film and not digital, or perhaps she really does fade into another dimension. But there is a live camera set up on Loch Ness if you want to watch out for her yourself.
Moving on now to number 6, we have Britain's Roswell. That's the nickname that's been given to a bizarre incident that took place in 1980 in Suffolk. Locals in Rendlesham Forest reported strange lights in the area. At first people dismissed it, but then even a US military official who was stationed there reported seeing flying lights in the sky that lowered into the woods and sent cattle into a state of frenzy. When they got to the spot where the lights appeared to land, they found only burnt marks on the ground. One of the American officials who witnessed the event was Colonel Charles Holt. He reported the sightings to the British Ministry of Defence. When they didn't appear to make any efforts to investigate, he accused both the US and the UK of having agents cover up the whole event. To this day, no official explanation has been given for Britain's Roswell. Coming at number 5 now, we have the hairy hands of Devon. This one comes from the 1920s in Devon, a time when locals swore there were a roaming pair of hairy hands in the the area. This is perhaps the strangest one on this list. Back then, there was a strange surge of fatal and serious crashes on a stretch of road that travels through a desolate patch of Dartmoor. Some of the crashes were fatal, but from the survivors came a strange tale. Many of them said a pair of rough, hairy hands appeared out of nowhere, grabbed their steering wheel, and smashed their cars into a ditch. Police investigated the road and they found that there was a problem with its surface. Others weren't convinced though and said they'd never had any problems with the road either before or after the hairy hands incidents. So what exactly was it? Moving on to number 4 now, we have the Loch Ness Monster. This has to make the cut in a video like this. Whether or not you believe an ancient reptilian creature lurks the waters of Loch Ness in Scotland, there is still a lot of mystery surrounding its many sightings. Going back over 1,400 years ago, Saint Columba was said to have rescued a man from suffering a brutal attack from a water beast in the River Ness. This story seemed to bubble under the surface with the local community for hundreds of years, but in 1933, after a number of sightings, people began to refer to the beast as the Loch Ness Monster. In 1934, Robert Kenneth Wilson published a photograph of what people claimed to be proof of Nessie. The picture showed a creature with dinosaur-like features with a long neck and a small head. The picture was later found to be a hoax, but the legend itself has never died down, becoming an international phenomenon. Like I said at the start, even if you don't think the Loch Ness Monster is real, all these sightings over the years require some sort of explanation. Moving on now to number 3, we have Jill Dando. In 1999, Jill Dando was a primetime TV journalist famous across the country. She was after arriving home in Fulham, West London at 11:30 AM on April 26, 1999. She had just put her key in the lock when someone grabbed her from behind. The killer held her with his right arm, forced her to the ground and fired a single shot through her left temple in what police described as a professional style execution. The following year, police arrested a Barry George who lived nearby to Jill's house. He was convicted and jailed for life, but eventually won an appeal against conviction in 2007. Since then, police have been exploring a number of different leads, including a jealous ex-boyfriend, Eastern European assassins, a mistaken identity, or perhaps the fact that she worked on Crime Watch, a show that exposed criminals to a national audience. Either way, it's been 19 years and counting, but there are still shadows of doubt over the case. Moving on to number 2 now, we have the Highgate Vampire. This one comes from North London, where Highgate Cemetery is said to have been home to an actual vampire during the 1960s. Some of you guys might just dismiss this right away as an urban legend, but a vampire is perhaps the only explanation for this mystery, no matter how far-fetched it seems. Back then, a group of young people who were interested in the occult began roaming the overgrown cemetery. On December 21st, 1969, one of the group, David Farrant, spent the night there. What happened on that night remained a mystery for 2 months, but David couldn't hold it back anymore. On December 21st, 1969, he wrote a letter to his local paper saying he had seen a supernatural grey figure. Other people began to speak up and said that they had seen a figure too, a tall man wearing a hat, a ghostly cyclist, and also a figure walking out into a pond. There were too many sightings now to just dismiss. A man called Sean Manchester put forward the theory that a king vampire of the undead was practicing black magic there. Some of you may dismiss that as ridiculous, but so far it really is the best theory for these mysterious sightings.
Coming into number 10, we have the upside down horseshoe. In the UK, horseshoes are a big symbol of good luck. This is for a number of reasons. One being that they're made from iron and forged in fire, which makes them representative of something strong and unbreakable. In folklore, goblins and demons are said to be afraid of iron. Also, horses don't seem to feel pain when horseshoes are hammered to their feet, which leads many people to believe that they're magical. A lot of people hang horseshoes in or outside of their homes in the UK, and it is also customary to give a bride a horseshoe on her wedding day. The 2 prongs are supposed to collect and store good luck. Great, sure, but woe betide you if you ever invert that horseshoe. Like, ever. Conversely, an upside down horseshoe is terrible luck in Britain. Any luck stored would immediately be poured out and lost. Others say that an upside down horseshoe would actually attract negativity. Sticking with shoes at number 9, we have new shoes on the table. Has anyone seen Blood Brothers the musical?
I'm pretty sure it's the only musical that Danny's ever seen. Anyway, one of the major omens in the musical that foreshadows the death of the twins is new shoes on the table. This is a classic British superstition. Shoes have a lot of superstition and cultural implications across the world, but in the UK, new shoes on the table is a terrible omen that invites bad luck into your life. Some people believe it signifies that you will have a fight with someone that you love, others say that it's a death omen, which is probably linked to the tradition of placing miners' old shoes on a table in the event of their death at work. Cheery. Coming into number 8, never open an umbrella indoors. Like never, don't do it. Freaks me out even thinking about it. Opening a brolly, as we call it in the UK, is a surefire way to invite bad luck if you do it inside. In fact, they say opening an umbrella indoors will mean bad luck will rain on you. Some say it is an insult to the sun god, others say it's an insult to the guardians of your home. Opening an umbrella indoors practically can actually cause you ill fortune because you could break something, but in British superstition, it runs much deeper than that. Coming into number 7, you should never sweep on New Year's Day. So this is a Scottish tradition and one that I observed this year as a precautionary measure. My friend Denise, who's Scottish, shout out Denise if you're watching, actually told me about this and I really did not want any 2019 bad luck. So it is bad luck to start the new year with a dirty house, so you should always clean your house and take your bins out and tidy before New Year. But when the clock strikes 12, you should not do any sweeping, vacuuming or mopping until the 2nd of January. Now the reason for this is because you will sweep away all of the good luck for the year, which really isn't what you want. Coming into number 6, we have salt over the shoulder. If you spill salt in the UK, it is a terrible omen. In order to protect yourself from bad luck when you spill salt, you have to throw some over your left shoulder. Now the reasoning is because when you spill the salt, the devil is invited to watch over you. Sure. Throwing salt is said to be in order to get him in the eye, so basically throw the salt at the devil. This distracts him from causing you any trouble. If you don't throw any salt when you spill salt, watch out, the devil's here. Coming in at number 5, never pass on the stairs. Stairs can be dangerous if you aren't using them properly. Once I fell down the stairs and actually fractured my leg, and a lot of older people end up having falls when climbing up or down the stairs. In the UK, it is absolutely bad luck to trip up on the stairs, but I guess that just makes sense. Crossing on the stairs, however, is the utmost bad luck in the UK. It's bad luck for both parties involved as well, you just don't want to be involved in it. It suggests that you will come across a great conflict in the near future. I didn't realise it wasn't a thing elsewhere in the world. When I come across other people on the stairs in Canada, I either walk back up or down so we don't have to cross, and usually people will look at me like I'm mad, but it's because I don't want you to get bad luck, so really you should be thanking me. Coming into number 4, never leave a white tablecloth out overnight. Never leave a white tablecloth out overnight on a table, as it is a sign that you will need a shroud in the house in the near future. A shroud is a traditional burial garment, so basically the superstition is saying that someone will die soon if you leave it out. Honestly, not ideal. Similarly, 13 people should never dine together, as the first to leave the table will be the first to die in the group. Coming into number 3, we have 3 drains in a row. Never walk over 3 drains in a row. In the UK, people believe this will bring you terrible, terrible, terrible luck. Some have no idea what bad luck is coming, just it simply is bad to do it. Others say that it's a sign that a lot of people will walk over your grave one day. There's also an old British belief that if you shudder, it's because someone's walking over your gravestone. They could be linked. If you do accidentally walk over 3 drains, you can remedy the bad luck by spitting on the last drain or finding a solitary drain to walk over. Coming into number 2, you must always salute the magpie. Seeing a magpie on its own is a terrible omen in the UK. We have a rhyme that applies to the spotting of magpies. 1 for sorrow, 2 for joy, 3 for a girl, 4 for a boy. Although the original rhyme is 1 for sorrow, 2 for mirth, 3 for a wedding and 4 for death. 5 for silver, 6 for gold, 7 for a secret not to be told, 8 for heaven, 9 for hell, 10 for the devil's own cell. If you see 1 magpie, it is an omen of sorrow, 4 is an omen of death, 9 for hell, and of course 10 for the devil. Back he is again. In order to rid yourself of the bad luck associated with seeing magpies, you must always salute them. If you see just 1 magpie, you should salute and say, "Hello Mr. Magpie, how's your wife?" Good. Great, we're all crazy. Finally, an urban legend and a superstition and fear all in one, we have the ravens of the Tower of London. Ravens in a lot of culture are bad omens, but for the UK, specifically the Crown, they are absolutely necessary. We need them, if not bad luck will ensue. Ever since the Tower of London has stood, which in some form has been for the best part of 1,000 years, there have been ravens there. We don't know why the ravens came, where they came from, and why they want to stay, but the superstition and legend is that the tower must have at least 6 ravens, if not the British monarchy will fall. The legend is enduring and was delivered to King Charles II on a need-to-know basis. He was considering having all the ravens killed, but it was only then that he was told that he shouldn't do it. It must have been passed down through word of mouth for generations. Since the 1600s, we have been keeping ravens there forcibly. Today, there's an actual raven master, a beef eater whose job it is to tend to the captive ravens at the tower. Currently, we have 6 and a spare. Their names right now are Hardy, Thor, Odin, Gwenolum, Cedric, Eugene, and Munin. They all sound like lads. Good on you, ravens. At one point in history, the ravens did almost leave the tower. During World War II, they couldn't abide by the sounds coming from the bombing of London. Luckily though, one remained and the UK did not fall, nor did the monarchy.
Starting us off at number 10 is the Beast of Bodmin Moor. Located in Cornwall, the Beast of Bodmin Moor is said to be a Black Panther looking cat that's meant to be 3 to 5 feet long with glowing yellow eyes. A total of 60 sightings of the beast have been reported, as well as people having found a bunch of mutilated slain livestock with no explanation for their deaths. The evidence was so abundant that the government actually launched an investigation looking into the beast, but found no further evidence for the cat, but also no evidence against it either. So many assumed it was an escaped cat from someone's private collection and it wasn't reported to authorities because it's obviously illegal. But things really got wild when less than a week later, after the investigation, a boy was walking along River Foy when he found a huge cat skull. The lower jaw was missing, but it had 2 massive canines, implying it could have been a leopard. So what kind of 3 to 5 foot cat is lethal enough to kill a leopard? After a lot of investigation, they found the skull was actually from a leopard, but it had been imported as part of a leopard skin rug. It had cuts on it showing the flesh had been scraped off with a knife, not another cat's teeth. So that was a dead end, but it still excited people enough to reignite the myth. I mean, not that it really died to begin with, but it was reignited. Coming in at number 9 are boggarts. Not the ones from Harry Potter, what a time and a half that would be. No, these ones are either household spirits or they live in fields and marshes. The ones found in houses are known to just cause a lot of chaos. They steal things, they make dogs go lame, they can turn milk sour, sometimes they crawl into your bed and put their hands all over you, and despite sounding annoying as hell, they are very loyal to the family they're with. A household boggart follows its family everywhere they go, so at least it'll annoy you for life. You know, like a sibling. Boggarts found outside are a lot more dangerous. They're known to abduct children, kill animals, and all around cause harm. To protect yourself and keep them away, you can hang a horseshoe outside your door or leave a pile of salt outside your bedroom, but the biggest warning is that you should never name a boggart. Once you name it, that's pretty much it. You're done. It can't be reasoned with, you can't persuade it, it just becomes uncontrollably destructive. Looks wise, they look like mini humans with bestial features. Their arms are extremely long, and despite being small, they're still as strong as a full-grown horse, so don't mess with them. At number 8 are the chime hours. So this one got me excited, so you guys better get excited too. Now this myth originated in northern England, and it's referring to the time of someone's birth. It's believed that people born during particular hours of the day and night have special abilities and are referred to as a chime child or chime children. Based on what source you're reading from, the abilities you gain when being a chime child really varies, and the hours that are considered chime hours also vary. According to Charles Dickens, a very, reputable source, it's 12 AM exactly. Others claim it's at the hours of monastic prayer, so that's 8 PM, midnight, and 4 AM. Either way, regardless of the hours, the abilities are pretty X-Men-esque. Some people become super perceptive with animals and become able to communicate with them, some become able to see and speak to ghosts and fairies, some gain healing abilities, but most of all, being around chime children causes you to lower your guard and speak super openly, so these people basically frankly know a hell of a lot about a lot of people. Chime children definitely, they ain't playing around. But there is a catch. It's said that if these people use their powers selfishly instead of to benefit others, they will just perish. I'd honestly love to be a chime child. I need to WhatsApp my mum now and ask her what time I was born. Probably not any of those times, but here's to hoping. Filling our number 7 slot, we have the Rat Man of Southend, and it's a pretty straightforward myth, honestly. Now this one is more of an urban legend than a myth, but I feel like in some cases both of those things are synonymous, so just shh. The myth of Ratman goes like this. Years ago, an old homeless man was seeking shelter in the winter and decided to sit in an underpass. A group of teenagers came from nowhere and started beating up the man, nearly killing him. It's said that as he was dying, a bunch of vermin living in the underpass started eating his face. After he finally passed away, many people have reported seeing a ghost in that underpass, whereas others have heard very loud rat-like squealing and large claws moving across the walls. Too big for a normal rat, but the right size for a rat man. Now at number 6 is Wayland's Smithy. Now Wayland's Smithy is a Neolithic chamber tomb and long barrow in Oxfordshire. Archaeologists say it was built soon after agriculture was introduced to Britain from Europe, but post 1738 it was believed that the site held more than what met the eye. Francis Wise, whoever the hell that is, said that a long time ago an invisible smith used to live at Wayland's Smith, as he called it. If a traveller's horse ever lost a shoe on the road, all they had to do was bring the horse and a small bit of money to Wayland's Smith and leave both there for a while. Upon their return, the money would be gone and the horse's shoe would be back on. Ever since the myth started circulating, there have been countless coins left at the site, with people literally shoving them in there in any crack they can. These days, people from the National Trust remove the coins from the site and donate them to local charities, but the myth lives on. Coming in at number 5 is Drake's Drum. Now this is more of a historical myth surrounding Sir Francis Drake, and if you don't know who he was basically an explorer, sea captain and slave trader during the Elizabethan era. I feel like most people have heard of his name, but a lot of people don't actually know what his story is, so there you go. Now it was said that he used to take a drum with him on his voyages around the world. The drum was pretty bougie, it had his coat of arms on it, some silver stud, it was decorative. Either way, the drum was with him on his last voyage, and as he was laying on his deathbed, his last wish was that the drum be returned to England, and in times of trouble it should be hit in order to call him back from heaven and rescue the country. Heavy words, really. The drum was then given back to his family, but it's become a huge icon in English folklore. Many say they've heard the drum beating during times of conflict, like when World War I began, or when Napoleon was brought to England as a prisoner, to name a few. Despite it being hit a bunch of times, a resurrected Sir Francis Drake is just nowhere to be found. At number 4 is Renadine. This was originally in an old ballad called The Mountains High, which basically said Renadine was a were-fox that could attract all beautiful women to him, and when they did come to him, he would kidnap them and take them away to his castle. One day he encounters a girl in the wilderness and abducts her, and what happens after that point is kind of left open-ended, but I'm sure you can imagine all what kinds of horrors would be taking place. Probably just some Netflix and chill. Either way, the myth first started going around as a warning to young girls to not trust charming strangers, which is fair enough, we still shouldn't do that even now, just making it clear. And either way, as time went on, the myth became a lot more magical and a lot less rational, so this one is most likely untrue, but it's still a good story to tell when you just want to get some morals across to children. Filling our number 3 slot are brownies. Not the chocolate kind, but I'm really hungry right now, so I totally wish it was. Damn my bad lunch planning. But either way, like boggets, brownies are also household spirits, but they're surprisingly a lot nicer. They usually come out at night and actually perform chores around the house and farming tasks. What more could you ask for, honestly? To keep them happy, all you literally have to do is leave out a bowl of cream or milk for them by the hearth of your house, and they'll be happy chappies, really. That's like the best trade deal in the history of trade deals, like to wake up, have your house cleaned, all for a bowl of milk. I'm not even mad. I'm really not even mad at that. I wouldn't even ask the brownie to pay rent. Just sleep in my bed if you want. Just please clean my house. But it's not all rainbows and butterflies. If a brownie thinks you've offended it or taken advantage of it in any way, it'll leave your house forever and pull pranks on you before it does. Again, if you anger them, they'll turn violent and malicious like boggets. Are they distant cousins or something? Looks wise, they're described as ugly, which is just rude, covered in hair and brown skinned. In olden times, they were said to be human sized, but nowadays the myth is that they're a lot smaller, more like like an elf. They can even turn invisible and are usually wearing rags or are naked, which sounds very Dobby-like. Now at number 2 is the Highgate Vampire. This myth was huge in the 70s, I'm talking proper media frenzy. So in the late 60s, a group of occult enthusiasts visited the Highgate Cemetery in London. According to them, they were arranged flowers taken from graves and put in circular patterns, all pointing to a new grave that was uncovered. The coffin was open and the body inside had a huge iron stake in the form of a cross driven straight through the lid and into the corpse's chest. David Farrant, a journalist, claimed he had seen a grey figure in the cemetery one night, and 13 other people responded to him saying they had seen something similar. Now the accounts kept saying different things. One said it was a tall man in a hat, a figure going into a pond, others said it was a woman in white, and then Sean Manchester, whoever that is, claimed it was a vampire. So the media went between Sean's story and David's, both competing to see who'd get to the bottom of the story first. Sean even hosted an exorcism in the cemetery and a bunch of hunters showed up swarming the gates. A few months later, a headless, charred remains of a woman were found close to where the open grave was. Most believed it was the vampire doing black magic, but no one knows for sure. Regardless of which side of the myth you believe, for the past 25 years numerous people have claimed seeing a vampire in the cemetery. Are you one of those people? Let me know below. And finally, at number 1 we have Longleat House. The 1,000-acre home is home to one of the longest mazes in the world, one of the best safari parks in Europe, and gardens for days, but it has a dark past. Back in 1733, the estate was owned by Viscount Weymouth, and he soon married Lady Louisa, who moved into the house with him, bringing with her a bunch of servants. She was quite fond of one of the servants in particular, a footman. Her fondness created jealousy among the other servants, which caused them to tell the Viscount that he was having an affair with Lady Louisa. And it's said that wasn't true, but I mean, I have my doubts. In a fit of rage, he wanted revenge, and the next events are a bit contested. It was said he either hired someone to ambush the footman and throw him down the staircase, or he did it himself. Either way, the footman got royally screwed because he ended up dying from a broken neck and was buried in the home's cellar. The next day, the Viscount told Lady Louisa that the footman had left in the early morning, but she got the feeling something just wasn't quite right. She spent all her waking hours searching the house for him, which took a major toll on her body, causing her to die from pneumonia mid-birth. She died never knowing the true story behind the footman, and so people claim they still see the ghost of her on the estate looking for him. Now many have reported seeing a lady in grey in the corridors of the house and near the stairway where he died. Despite this sounding completely made up, they actually found a body in the cellar of the house, and it was a male dressed in period footman uniform. So the story checks out, and so does the ghost. Why couldn't the Viscount just have asked his wife about the situation? Like, why did the footman have to die? No one had to die in the situation.
Alright, next up at number 9 now guys, we have the Devils in the Bins. The House of the Bins is an old Scottish ancestral home. General Tam Dalyell was the head of the Dalyell family in the 17th century. Now while he lived there, Tam claimed that every night the devil visited him in his home for a game of cards. He said the devil usually won. Now in retrospect, this might have been a good thing. You see, one night the devil appeared as usual, and as usual the devil and Tam sat down to play cards. This night was different though. This night, for the first time ever, Tam seemed to be getting the upper hand. He was winning. As the game went on, the devil got more and more angry about this. Eventually, when the game looked lost for him, he flew into a rage. The devil then threw a single marble at Tam. It missed and instead landed in the sergeant's pond outside the house. Now for many years people laughed at Tam and dismissed his story as insane. Then, over 200 years later, the pond outside was apparently drained, and what should they find buried in the mud at the bottom but a single shiny marble?
He lost his marble! One marble. One marble? At number 8 we've got Abandoned Annie. The City Chambers is a famous building in Edinburgh, with ancient alleys that run beneath. The streets below the City Chambers are said to be haunted, and they attract psychics, ghost hunters, and mediums. This is because back in the 16th and 17th centuries, this particular area of Edinburgh was hit extremely hard by the plague. The streets used to be littered with bodies and sick people who were banished and left for dead. After the 18th century, the abandoned homes and alleys were sealed, but that doesn't stop people from venturing down there. There have been many strange strange noises and sightings reported, but most notably a psychic claims to have come into contact with the ghost of a young girl named Annie. Abandoned Annie is a story that began in 1992 after a Japanese psychic called Eiko Gibo went to the close as a part of a documentary on paranormal activity. When the group were touring the area, she came across a room that she at first was too afraid to enter. She said the room had a terrible feeling of sickness, hunger, and cold. But then Eiko went inside the room because she said she was invited by the ghost of a little girl named Annie who had died of the plague. Annie grabbed her hand and said that she had been abandoned by her family and that she had lost her doll. Eiko later went back to the room with a Barbie for Annie to play with, and since then, visitors to Annie's room are told to bring a gift for her. There is now a pile of toys created by people who have visited her room. To this day, people report feeling sick, uneasy, and cold while visiting Annie's room, despite the fact that there is no historical record of any girl named Annie, and the story has been dismissed as a popular urban myth. An urban myth that actually has a happy purpose, apparently. Along with toys, people leave money for Annie, and at the end of every year, the money is counted and given to the sick kids hospital. So far, Annie has raised more than £45,000 for other sick children.
Next up at number 7 now, guys, we have the A75. Now that is the name of what's said to be the most haunted road in Scotland bar none. It runs through the county of Dumfriesshire and has been a hub of reports of supernatural activity over the years. It's actually attracted paranormal investigators to it from all over the world. Kathleen Crone is the founder of Mostly Ghostly, great name by the way. Now she said there have been screaming hags, eyeless phantoms, and a menagerie of unearthly creatures witnessed on this famous road. In 1962, perhaps one of the most famous sightings occurred on the road. Derek and Norman Ferguson were driving along the road when a large hen apparently flew into the windscreen of their car. They then saw huge cats and other monstrous creatures pass by them, as well as a phantom furniture van, whatever that is, all of which vanished into thin air. In the years since then, the number of stories has grown to the point where some truck drivers actually avoid the A75 altogether.
Alright, it is time for number 6, the Boneless. The true story of the Boneless comes from the Shetland Islands, a group of small islands off the coast of Scotland, where the inhabitants were once terrorized by a ghostly blob. Yes, you heard that correctly. Stories about a ghostly apparition called the Boneless, and sometimes a frightening, have been whispered on the Shetland Island for years now. It's based on an account found in the book Shetland Traditional Lore by Jesse Saxby. Although no one could describe the apparition properly, people called it the Boneless because witnesses say it looked like a giant glowing white blob. Others said it looked like a jellyfish or a slimy white cloud. The Boneless would appear pressed up against windows and it never made a sound. It could move though. Apparently it could move faster than a dog. If you had happened to find yourself face to face with the Boneless, you would cower in fear and often die of fright. There's a story about one boy who was dragged by the Boneless to the edge of the cliff. He described it as smelling like rotting flesh. As he heard the waves crashing below, he grabbed the rocks and hung on for life. The Boneless rolled off the cliff and disappeared, and the boy managed to drag himself back to his home to tell his parents. Next, at number 5, we've got the haunting of Castle Stewart. The story goes like this. The Earl of Moray inherited Castle Stewart from his father. He wanted to rent it out, but he couldn't because the castle had such a bad reputation for being haunted. So the Earl tried to improve the castle's reputation by offering a reward to any man who was brave enough to spend the night in the castle. News about the reward spread, and eventually 4 men agreed. A minister, an elder in the Presbyterian church, a local shoemaker, and the last was a large man named Rob Angus. The deal was each of the men had to spend an entire night alone in a haunted room. Once they were inside, the door would be locked and wouldn't be unlocked until the next morning. The minister fell asleep in the room and had a dream about a blood-splattered man who sat down next to him. When he woke up, no one was there. The elder had a similar experience. While he was reading his Bible, the door to the room sprang open, and in walked a man covered in blood. The man drew his dagger on the elder, who fainted. He was found the next morning in complete shock. When it was the shoemaker's turn, he heard the door to the room open. A tall man with hooves for feet appeared in the doorway. The being jumped at the shoemaker and he fainted in terror. He was found unconscious on the floor the next morning. And lastly, it was Rob Angus's turn. Rob Angus was a big, strong Scotsman who said he wasn't afraid of anything. As the servant closed the door to his room, he said, "You will find me as I am, or dead." When the servant returned in the morning, the furniture in the room was broken and all over the place, but there was no sign of Rob. But then, the servant looked out the window and saw Rob Angus lying on the ground, dead. At some point, Rob Angus fell out of the window or was pushed. Various sightings and reports of paranormal activity over the years have given Castle Stewart the reputation of being one of the most haunted castles in the world.
Coming at number 4 now, guys, we have Arthur's Seat Coffin. Coming at number 4 now, guys, we have the Arthur's Seat Coffins. This one comes from Edinburgh. Arthur's Seat is a rocky hill there, sort of a landmark, if you will. One day in 1836, 5 local boys discovered an entrance to a small cave on the rugged northeastern face of that famous hill. There they found some intricately carved miniature figures set in coffins. I know, that's incredibly creepy. The 17 coffins had actually been left undisturbed for an unknown amount of time. Each casket contained expertly carved human effigies, creepily dressed in very unique clothing. They had painted black boots on and twisted facial expressions. In the years since then, these creepy coffins have defied all attempts to explain them. This has opened the door to a number of creepy urban legends surrounding them. The most popular is that they were created to commemorate the 17 victims of the notorious Edinburgh murderers and grave robbers Burke and Hare. I'm no relation to that Burke though. Okay, maybe somewhere along the line. Awkward. Moving on to number 2 now, we have Gilly Doo. I think I'm pronouncing that right. In Scottish legend, he's a solitary Scottish male fairy that lives alone in the forest. He disguises himself in trees so as not to be seen by humans. His light green skin and long branch arms make it almost impossible for people to spot him. However, it's important to note that the Gilly Doo is usually only this elusive to adults. You see, he's been known to appear and interact with friendly children. Now you should know that doesn't mean that every interaction is a good one. He has been known to prey on people lost in the woods, killing or enslaving them. Perhaps the strangest thing I read about this creature is that he is said to collect the teeth of children to perform protective magic on them. This has led some people to believe that the Gilly Doo actually gave birth to the legend of the Tooth Fairy, a much lighter story. I think we can all agree. I don't think the Tooth Fairy has killed or enslaved anyone. If you know otherwise, let me know. And finally, number 1 now, we have the Mackenzie Poltergeist. This is perhaps the most famous ghost story in all of Scotland. The Black Mausoleum is the name of a tomb in Edinburgh's Greyfriars Cemetery and has become famous as the home of an evil paranormal entity. Over the years, visitors have reported feeling extreme hot spots and cold spots. They leave with cuts, bruises and burns on their body. Photographic evidence for the legend includes pictures of these injuries as well as pictures from inside the tomb that some claim show an unidentified shape. Others have reported seeing a white figure in the dark, smelling strange odours and hearing knocking noises under the ground and even from inside the tomb itself. If that wasn't enough for you, locals have gone to the grave some days to find dead animals in front of the Black Mausoleum. Some people have even claimed to have been possessed, which led to the grounds being exorcised twice, both unsuccessfully apparently. In the past few decades, it seems as though the Mackenzie Poltergeist has begun to spread. Poltergeist activity has been reported in 4 different houses around the graveyard, and in 2002 a large fire broke out in the residences behind George Mackenzie's tomb. Starting off at number 10 now, we have the Big Grey Man of Ben Macdui. Amphir Liath Mór is the Gaelic name of a mythical creature known as the Big Grey Man, who is said to dwell at the summit of Scotland's Ben Macdui mountain. Over the years, many climbers have felt his presence or even seen him, a lumbering giant that skulks in the thick fog of the mountain peak. He's often described as being very large, sometimes about 10 feet tall when standing completely upright. Short hairs cover his whole body, especially thick on his broad shoulders. His arms are also said to swing wildly when he's sighted. Sightings of this creature have gone back for centuries, but the first credible account came from Professor Norman Colley in 1891. The day he saw it, he made a note in his journal saying, "I was returning home from a calm on the summit in the mist when I began to think I heard something else other than my own footsteps. For every few steps I took, I heard a crunch and then another crunch as if someone was walking after me, but taking footsteps 3 or 4 times the length of my own." His account ends up going into much more detail, but for many people, this account and a few others are more than enough to convince them of the Big Grey Man of Ben Macdui. Moving on to number 9 now, we have Cathedral House Hotel. This building in Glasgow was originally built in 1877 as a halfway house for prisoners who had been released from the nearby Duke Street prison. That prison was the site of many executions over the years, including 12 in the 20th century. The last person to be executed in Scotland, Susan Newell, was hanged at the prison in October 1923 after being found guilty of strangling a paperboy. In the years since the last execution, locals swear that the spirits of the executed have made their home in the nearby Cathedral House Hotel. Some say they have felt a ghostly presence brush up against them on the staircase. There have also been several reports of 2 ghostly children being heard on the top floor of the hotel, and items of furniture moving of their own accord. In 2005, the Ghost Finders Scotland group conducted a thorough investigation using high-tech equipment. They recorded unusual EMF and tri-field readings, along with light orbs and various other anomalies appearing on both video footage and still photographs. Moving on to number 8 now, we have the Well of the Dead. Nice name. Many Scots will be familiar with the Jacobite Rising of 1746. On April 16th of that year, the Scottish forces fighting for independence from the British were defeated, suffering heavy losses. Many lost their lives on the fields of Culloden. Legend says that birds no longer sing above the boggy land where Jacobites made their final stand. That rhymed, that wasn't intentional. Locals have witnessed a tartan-wearing spirit wandering through the moor there. Those who get close enough manage to hear it muttering one single word: defeated. Every single year on April 16th, the anniversary of the battle, they say you can still hear the clashing of swords and the sound of men dying, locked in their bloody battle for eternity. Next up at number 5 now, we have Provan Hall. Many people in Glasgow will know this as one of the oldest buildings in the city. It was built as a hunting lodge for the bishops of Glasgow in 1471. That's more than 20 years before Christopher Columbus set sail. For all you history buffs out there trying to get your head around the dates, it's a pretty old building. It has played host to some distinguished guests as well, including Mary Queen of Scots and her father, King James V. Ghosts have been reported at the hall ever since those days. Locals say they've seen spirits of murderers and also their victims. The master bedroom is said to be haunted by a man with a dagger. They say that in the 19th century he came home from 2 years at war to find his wife had had a baby with another man. In a fit of rage, he stabbed her to death and then slit his own throat. Another less violent ghost that's been seen is that of Reston Mathers. He was a previous owner of the hall who is often seen on the staircase. He died there in 1934 after breathing problems and is said to always be dressed in a black bowler hat and sporting a bright white beard. Next up, number 4 now, we have the Green Lady of Crathis Castle. Many people know of the Green Lady of Crathis Castle, a forlorn spirit that has been seen by an alarming amount of people over the years. The castle was built in the 16th century, and despite its grand size, the Green Lady is only ever seen in one room. She paces back and forth in front of the fireplace there, sometimes cradling an infant in her arms. Apparently, even Queen Victoria herself saw the spectre while staying in the castle one night. Some say that in life the apparition was a servant girl who fell pregnant out of wedlock and mysteriously disappeared soon after. For a while, this was just dismissed as nonsense, but in the 1800s, a grisly discovery was made. While renovating a fireplace, some workmen uncovered the skeletal remains of a woman and child. Even that story has now been lost in the sands of time. Moving on to number 2 now, we have the Kelpsie. These are perhaps some of the most feared and famous creatures in Scottish folklore. Most accounts describe these creatures as shapeshifters that often take the form of a horse. When they appear in human male form, they are often very hairy. They jump out at lone travellers on deserted roads and crush their victims to death. If they appear in human female form, their behaviour is altogether different. They take the form of a beautiful woman and lure men to their deaths in the water, much like the sirens that we've talked about in other cultures' urban legend videos. In horse form, they're perhaps even more dangerous though. It's said that they entice people to climb on their back for a ride, only to drown them. What's even more twisted is that they apparently target children in particular. Many centuries ago, people in Scotland would be wary of dark or white ponies that appear to be lost. They feared they were kelpies that would take them to a watery grave. One way to spot a kelpie from a normal horse was that kelpies had dripping manes, a sign that they had recently come from water. When a kelpie's tail entered water, it made a sound like thunder, a sure sign to stay indoors as a kelpie was on the prowl. And finally, at number 1 now, we have the Flannan Isles Lighthouse Mystery. These isles are a group of uninhabited rocks off the coast of mainland Scotland. One of the islands is called Eileen Moor and features a grass hill at its highest point. On top of that lies Flannan Isles Lighthouse. A year after it was built, on December 7th, 1900, the new lighthouse keepers arrived. They were Donald MacArthur, Thomas Marshall and James Ducat. The inspector made sure they were okay and then left. Soon after, the island became enveloped in a thick, rolling fog. The inspectors couldn't see the lighthouse from the mainland because of this fog. A ship that went by a week later reported that the lighthouse was not shining its light. After a full 3 weeks, the lighthouse had still not been seen, and the men had not returned from their rotation on the island. A rescue ship found that the island was empty. The lighthouse was locked. The clock on the wall had stopped, and there was a cooked meal just sat on the table. The last entry in the log had been made almost 2 weeks before. Authorities concluded they were swept away by a storm, but locals had maintained something supernatural happened on that island and that the fog had something to do with it.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have Breavel's Castle in Gloucester. I don't know, if I said that wrong, remove some letters. I don't know what to tell you. Breavel's Castle is a ruined Norman fortress located in the Forest of Dean, and over the years the castle has been the subject of many haunting tales and ghostly sightings. One of the most famous stories of that is the White Lady, who is said to haunt the castle. According to legend, she is the ghost of a woman who was wrongly accused of stealing from the castle and was subsequently executed. Her ghost has been reported to roam the castle's halls and corridors, and she has been seen by many visitors and staff members. Another famous ghostly tale from the castle is that of the Phantom Coach, who is said to drive up to the castle gates before disappearing without a trace. Legend has it that the coach is driven by the ghost of a former owner of the castle who was killed by his own wife and her lover. In addition to these tales, there have also been reports of unexplained noises and strange apparitions throughout the castle. Despite the many stories of ghosts and hauntings, this castle remains a popular tourist destination and a fascinating piece of British history. Why not head over for a visit? I heard you can even stay in the oubliette. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Glasgow Necropolis. This place is exactly what it sounds like. It is a necropolis, and what place is more haunted than a necropolis? The Glasgow Necropolis is a Victorian cemetery located on a hill overlooking Glasgow, Scotland. Over the years, it has become a popular spot for ghost hunters and paranormal enthusiasts due to the many haunting tales that surround the site. One of the most famous ghost stories associated with the necropolis is that of a female ghost. According to legend, she is the ghost of a wealthy woman who was buried in a white dress and veil. Her ghost has been seen by many visitors floating among the tombstones and crypts. Another tale involves the ghost of a man who was buried alive. Legend has it that he woke up in his coffin and tried to escape but died before he could make it out. Visitors have reported hearing knocking sounds coming from the ground and feeling cold spots near his grave. At the end of the day, while there are thousands of people buried here, only a small group have gravestones and even fewer have names. This only adds to the eerie nature of the cemetery. There are even rumors that a vampire just might be wandering the grounds looking for its next prey. All in all, this place is full of haunting tales, urban legends, and a whole bunch of spook. In our number 8 spot today, we have Pluckley in Kent. The village of Pluckley, located in the county of Kent, England, is known for being one of the most haunted villages in the entire country. There are numerous ghost stories associated with the village, many of which have been passed down through generations. One of the most famous tales is that of the Screaming Woods, a dense forest area on the outskirts of the village. According to legend, the woods are haunted by the ghost of a highwayman who was caught and killed by villagers, and his screams can still be heard at night. Another famous ghost story involves the Watercress Woman, a ghostly figure who is said to appear near a stream in the village, carrying a basket of watercress on her arm. It is believed that she drowned in the stream while picking watercress, and her ghost has been seen by many villagers over the years. Other reported sightings include ghosts of a monk, a schoolmaster, and even a haunted pub. Despite the spooky tales, Pluckley remains a charming and picturesque village, attracting visitors from around the world. Visit if you dare. In our number 7 spot today, we have Chillingham Castle in Northumberland. Chillingham Castle, located in Northumberland, England, is considered to be one of the most haunted castles in the country. The castle has a dark and mysterious history, and there have been numerous reports of paranormal activity over the years. One of the most famous ghosts associated with the castle is the Blue Boy. According to legend, the ghost is a spirit of a young man who was imprisoned in a room in the castle and left to die. His ghost has been seen by many visitors, appearing as a blue flash of light or as a boy dressed in blue clothing. Another famous tale is that of a specific room in the castle where prisoners were once harmed and then executed. Visitors have reported feeling cold spots, hearing unexplained noises, and even feeling the presence of the ghosts of the tormented prisoners. Other reported sightings include include ghosts of a lady in white, a soldier, and even a ghostly cat. In our number 6 spot today we have Corfe Castle. Corfe Castle, located in Dorset, England, is a ruined fortress with a rich history and many ghostly tales. The castle was originally built in the 11th century and was destroyed during the English Civil War in the 17th century. One of the most famous ghosts associated with the castle is that of Lady Banks, the wife of the castle's owner during the Civil War. According to legend, she defended the castle against enemy soldiers and was killed during the siege. Her ghost has been seen wandering the castle ruins dressed in a long white gown. Another famous tale is that of the drummer boy, a ghostly figure who is said to haunt the castle gatehouse. According to legend, the boy was caught spying on enemy soldiers, and this swiftly led to his demise. His ghost has been seen and heard drumming his sticks on the castle walls. As you walk up the steps to the castle, you might also learn about Edward the Martyr, who was set to be king until he also lost his life here at the hands of his own stepmother, who wanted her own birth son to be the heir to the throne. Other reported sightings include ghosts of soldiers, knights, and even a headless woman. Didn't see that one coming. In our number 5 spot today we have Whitby Abbey, North Yorkshire. Whitby Abbey is a ruined Gothic abbey located in the seaside town of Whitby, North Yorkshire in England, and upon looking at it, it totally makes sense why people say this was part of the inspiration for Dracula. The abbey has a rich history and has been the subject of many haunting tales over the years. One of the most famous ghost stories associated with the abbey is that of the Whitby Abbey ghost. Of course. According to legend, the ghost is the spirit of a young woman who fell to her death from the abbey's high tower while trying to escape her angry husband. Her ghost has been seen wandering the abbey ruins dressed in a white dress. Ghosts really seem to vibe with white dresses for some reason. Another famous tale is that of the Black Abbot, a ghostly figure who is said to haunt the abbey's grounds. According to legend, the Black Abbot was a former abbot of the monastery who was executed for his crimes. His ghost has been seen wearing a black robe and carrying a book. Other reported sightings include ghosts of monks, nuns, and even a ghostly dog. Despite the many spooky tales, Whitby Abbey remains a popular tourist destination, offering visitors a glimpse into the fascinating history of the abbey and the paranormal activity associated with it. In our number 4 spot today we have Glencoe, Argyll. Glencoe is a beautiful and rugged valley located in the Argyll region of Scotland and is pretty famous for being one of the settings in the Bond film Skyfall, but it's also famous for its haunting tales. The area is steeped in history and it all starts back in 1692 with what is known as the Massacre of Glencoe. In that year, soldiers loyal to the English crown killed members of the MacDonald clan who had been hosting them as guests. It is said that the ghosts of the lost MacDonalds still haunt the valley, seeking revenge on their killers. Another famous tale is that of the Grey Man. According to legend, the Grey Man is a ghostly figure who is said to haunt the summits of the mountains in Glencoe. His ghostly presence has been reported by many climbers and hikers over the years. In our number 3 spot today we have Highgate Cemetery, London. This cemetery is located in London and for years it has been the central point of many a horrific tale. These stories include those of demons, ghosts, and all things paranormal, and even the famous Highgate vampire. Legend goes that the cemetery is home to this vampire as first reported by 2 girls walking through the area. They claimed to see the dead rise from their graves. Soon after this report came the discovery of animal carcasses, which is never a good sign, but to make matters worse, all of these ones had been drained of their blood. Stories of the vampire spread like wildfire and people were rightfully pretty creeped out. This all led to the vampire hunt that took place on Friday, April 13th, 1973. Friday the 13th. It's never good. During this hunt, residents of the town began exhuming bodies and then also beheading them. Okay? There are still many rumors and stories that swirl around the area, and I'm just gonna go ahead and say, if the gates to hell weren't located here before the beheadings, they definitely are now. In our number 2 spot today we have the Skirrid Inn in Wales. I love visiting a place that has lots of history. You know when you enter a building and can learn about its history and the people who used to walk in its halls? It's just so interesting and very cool, except for when you're sipping away on a cold tasty pint and find out that where you're sitting is a place that used to be used for public hangings.
yeah, things get a bit more grim when you bring that story up, alright? I don't know if I want what's on those taps. That is exactly the history behind the Skirrid Inn. The upper area of the pub was once used as a courthouse where people would stand trial. If the person on trial was convicted and sentenced to death, I guess this place was super convenient because they also wouldn't have to waste any time and could just carry out the sentence right then and there. A bit dark, I'd say. The bar decided it would keep the creepy little cell that was once used to hold the prisoners, which seems like an odd choice, but I guess it's all in the name of history. It is estimated that around 180 executions took place here, and to this day you can still take a peek at the hanging beam that was used way back when. Not exactly sure I'd want to, as there's no way that thing isn't cursed. Many people who have been to the bar state that they have felt things like a sudden drop in temperature, the feeling of a rope around their neck, or even seeing some strange, scary, shadowy figures. I got a strange feeling that if you were to head into the cell that's still around, you just might find yourself in a place that you don't want to go to. In our number 1 spot today we have Blickling Hall in Norfolk. Blickling Hall, located in Norfolk, England, is a beautiful stately home that dates back to the 15th century, and it has been the subject of numerous reported ghost sightings and paranormal activity. One of the most famous ghost stories associated with the hall is that of the Anne Boleyn ghost. According to legend, Anne Boleyn, the second wife of Henry VIII, was born at Blickling Hall, and her ghost is said to haunt the property. Her ghost has been seen wearing a white dress and carrying her own severed head. That is really about as haunting as it gets. Apparently on the anniversary of her execution, people have reported seeing Anne ride up to the estate in a ghostly carriage, driven by a man who is also headless. Another famous tale is that of the Screaming Lady. It is said that a lady who was killed in the hall has been heard screaming in the corridors at night. The estate is now owned by the National Trust because no one else would want to buy that haunted of a house, and it remains a popular spot for those interested in history as well as the paranormal.
So coming in at number 10 is the most recent sighting. During the last weekend in August, fans of Nessie went on a huge hunt for the monster. That's when the 6th so-called sighting of the Loch Ness Monster this year was recorded by a woman who was baffled after seeing a curved creature in the legendary water on August 31st. Fiona Wade claimed that it was like nothing I've seen before and I can only describe as Nessie. She reported seeing something similar to which was spotted by civil servant Alistair Gray on August 26th. Mr. Gray saw 3 odd and seemingly connected shapes near Invermorrison. Miss Wade said her sighting was almost identical to that seen by Mr. Gray and probably in a very similar location. I might add that I was not aware of this sighting on Saturday until returning home this evening. It initially looked like a periscope, but then 2 curved areas followed. It was moving about halfway in the loch, looking roughly over to midway between Foyers and Whitebridge, she said. I've seen deer crossing before, but this was like nothing I have seen before, and I can only describe it as Nessie, as I can't think of any other logical thing it could have been. It was large enough to catch my eye and appeared to leave slight wake behind it, she added. The sighting took place at 10:45 a.m., the water was calm, and there was allegedly no nearby boat activity. The sighting, which lasted 30 to 40 seconds, has been accepted by the official Loch Ness Monster Sightings Register. Number 9. The first sighting. The earliest report of a monster in the vicinity of Loch Ness appears in the Life of St. Columba by Adamnan, written in the 7th century AD. According to Adamnan, writing about a century after the events described, Irish monk St. Columba was staying in the land of the Picts with his companions when he encountered local residents burying a man by the River Ness. They explained that the man was swimming in the river when he was attacked by a water beast that mauled him and dragged him underwater, despite their attempts to rescue him by boat. Columba sent a follower, Lugin Mako Min, to swim across the river. The beast approached him, but Columba made the sign of the cross and said, "Go no further, do not touch the man, go back at once." The creature stopped as if it had been pulled back with ropes and fled, and Columba's men and the Picts gave thanks for what they perceived as a miracle. The believers in the monster point to this story set in the River Ness rather than the loch itself as evidence for the creature's existence as early as the 6th century. Number 8. Aldi McKay. The best known article that first attracted a great deal of attention about the creature was published on May 2nd, 1933 in the Intervest Courier about a large beast or whale-like fish. The article by Alex Campbell, water bailiff for Loch Ness and part-time journalist, discussed a sighting by Aldi McKay of an enormous creature with the body of a whale rolling in the water in the loch while she and her husband John were driving on the A82 April 15, 1993. Now the Courier in 2017 published excerpts from the Campbell article, which has been titled Strange Spectacle in Loch Ness. The creature disported itself, rolling and plunging for fully a minute, its body resembling that of a whale, and the water cascading and churning like a simmering cauldron. Soon, however, it disappeared in boiling mass of foam. Both onlookers confessed that there was something uncanny about the whole thing, for they realized that there was no ordinary Dizen in the depths because, apart from its enormous size, the beast, in taking the final plunge, sent out waves that were big enough to have been caused by a passing steamer. Number 7. Arthur Grant. On January 5th, 1934, a motorcyclist, Arthur Grant, claimed to have nearly hit the creature while approaching Abriacan near the northeastern end of the loch at about 1 a.m. on a moonlit night. According to Arthur, the creature had a small head attached to a long neck. Then the creature saw him and crossed the road back to the loch. Arthur, a veterinary student, described it as a cross between a seal and a plesiosaur. He said he dismounted and followed it to the loch, but only saw ripples. He produced a sketch of the creature that was examined by zoologist Maurice Burton, who stated it was consistent with the appearance and behavior of an otter, but I'm not too sure. Regarding the long size of the creature reported by Arthur, it has been suggested that this was a faulty observation due to the poor lighting conditions, and paleontologist Darren Nash has suggested that Arthur may have seen either an otter or seal and exaggerated his sighting over time, but I don't care what they say, that drawing he drew of the beast is the Loch Ness Monster. It's not just a simple otter.
Number 6, we have Crodramentian. This scary creature is believed to be living in the lakes and seas throughout Luxembourg. He is said to be lurking in the water, and he will spare children who come too close. Remind me to never go swimming in Luxembourg ever. But wait, there's more horror to this story. It doesn't end there. Apparently he can also appear in bathrooms, bathtubs, and toilets. I mean, wait, what? Is this real life right now? What are you doing lurking in the toilet? Do you know what I'm about to do? They are also known to be extremely aggressive, and they will stalk their victims until they have dragged them beneath the water. Pretty terrifying if you ask me. They carry a large spear that they use to impale their victims, and people believe that this hideous creature is the reason behind a lot of the unexplained drownings that happen in the lake and seas in Luxembourg. The Krakenot's tail takes us up to number 5 on our list. This terrifying creature is pretty similar to the Yeti, except it's believed that he lives in the mountain between Czech Republic and Poland. Apparently he is extremely unpredictable, and you never know if he's going to ignore you or if you'll become his next snack. According to this folklore, one day he could choose to send an avalanche your way, or he could decide to save you from freezing temperatures. So if this hairy beast is actually alive, then it's probably a good idea to just avoid him at all costs. Oh, and the Krakenotch is known to target unsuspecting hikers in the area, and he will always use force of nature to carry out his evil deeds. And now at number 4, we're talking about the Strigoi, which comes from Romania. Alright guys, brace yourselves because this next creature looks like my absolute nightmare coming to life. The Strigoi are actually pretty similar to vampires because they like to roam the streets at night, and they are also known as supernatural creatures. But are these things just scary monsters from folklore, or could they be real? The thing about the Strigoi is that they're able to shapeshift into any creature that they want. So locating them or hunting them would be next to impossible. I guess it would also be impossible to know whether or not they exist. And also they can make themselves invisible, so what do they crave the most? Yeah, you guessed it, it's blood. Actually back in 2004, a Romanian girl claimed that she was visited by a Strigoi, and it took the form of her dead uncle, so the family dug up his grave, cut his heart out, and burned it. And yeah, I guess that's the most logical thing to do. It's kind of weird. I don't recommend any of you guys doing that because that is absolutely wrong. And now at number 3, we have vampires from Eastern Europe. A scary European creature list could not be complete without some good old-fashioned vampires. Whenever I think of vampires, I'm thinking, sharp fangs, their insatiable desire for blood, and their extremely cold and pale skin, and they sleep upside down. But are they just a myth? Or could real vampires be roaming the earth looking to sink their fangs in unexpected humans? I'm not gonna rule anything out. I mean, anything is plausible, right? Do you guys know how many people have reported seeing a vampire? Well, there are too many to count. So could all of them be making this up? I probably believe that there are some scary cannibalistic humans out there, but I don't know if I can get on board with real life vampires. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Are vampires real? Number 2 takes us over to Pricolichi in Romania. For those of you guys who aren't aware, Pricolichi is basically a terrifying giant wolf that is hungry for some human flesh. And yeah, I didn't know what they were either. I did the Google search thing. Well, it is said that violent men become Pricolichi after they die so that they can continue harming other humans. But many people believe in Romania, well, they have claimed that they were viciously attacked by an abnormal large and strong wolf. It's also said that these wolves attack silently and unexpectedly. Victims of these attacks also say that these wolves aren't ordinary wolves. So what are they? Well, they are something much more sinister, larger, and aggressive. That's why that there is a strong belief in Russia. There is a myth of the Pricolichi could actually be a harsh reality. And if we aren't careful, then these things could easily kill us off, like one by one. And now number 1, we have the Fear-Liath. This is the name that is given to a 10-foot tall humanoid creature that haunts the 2nd tallest mountain in Scotland. So if you love to hike, and you're in Scotland, I'd recommend hiking either the 3rd tallest or the tallest mountain in Scotland. This hairy creature is known to cause an uncontrollable feeling of anxiety or panic among hikers who are near him. The first recorded sighting by a scientist was way back in 1890. He was so scared for his life that he didn't tell anyone about his encounter until 1925, which is 35 years later. But once he did, he discovered that others had the same experience he did. He realized that the Fear-Liath might actually be real and he could be terrorizing and brutally killing hikers in Scotland. So hikers beware.